5 minutes after 7 o'clock in Trinidad and Tobago. Let's return to our discussion with our two guests, one in studio, one on the phone, Afra Raymond and Reggie Dumas, Mr. Dumas on the phone. We're talking about the appointment of the board of the Office of Procurement Regulation, which, Afra, as you were mentioning to me before we return from the news. This is a new board.
Yes.
So why is it taking so long? It was agreed to 2 or 3 years ago, you were saying?
Yeah, well, the point is, Fazeer, that this is actually an important step in putting into action the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act, which was passed in January of 2015. When the P&M administration took office in September of 2015, there were some amendments that were proposed, and those amendments were passed in June of 2016. So the act as it sits now has the support of both sides of Parliament. It's about 95% of what we wanted. There are 3 things that need to happen for that act to become effective.
Right.
Number 1 is there needs to be training, because people in the public service and in the private sector who are going to be operating within that act, transacting in public money, need to be properly trained, because the act contains very serious penalties. Number 2 is there needs to be a budget created coming out of the Ministry of Finance to fund the whole thing: an office building, motor cars, stationary staff, telephone lines, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
Practical things about having an organization.
Right.
And thirdly, within the hands of President Carmona is the appointment of a board for the Office of Procurement Regulation that will run the whole apparatus. And that is the thing, that was the subject, that third item was the subject of our open letter to President Carmona, asking for that third and critical stage to be as transparent as possible.
And Mr. Dumas, we tested the line, so hopefully it's a lot better than it was just before we reached the news at the top of the hour. Why is it imperative, based on the letter signed by yourself, Mr. Raymond, and of course Victor Hart of EITI, why are you seeking transparency, a greater transparency in the selection process in this particular case?
I want to see transparency as far as possible in every case, and not merely in this particular matter. As you know, we tend to run a very opaque system in this place, where things are hidden all the time, and you hear about cabinet decisions that you don't know how they have come about, etc., etc. I repeat what I said earlier, that a lot of money has been lost to the taxpayer and the citizens of this country through corruption over the years, over the decades. It didn't start yesterday. It didn't start with party politics. It started before, for those who are old enough to remember. And we have to have transparency at all levels, including the level of the president. This is not an attack on the president. This is simply to say that we need the transparency and the accountability throughout the society where taxpayers' funding is and monies are concerned. So therefore, we wrote the president asking him, because the president has said that, issued a statement some time ago saying that one expected that he would have everything ready by the end of the year. Now we are today on the 18th of December. There's not too much time left before the end of the year comes. Maybe he will do something in the next few days. We hope so. But we need to know what he's doing. Just as when people apply or firms apply for in response to a tender offer or request, and you publish the names of the firms and so on, that so firm A, firm B, and firm C have applied. So we are saying in this open letter, okay, tell us who applied. Whom are you considering? What are the bases on which you're considering these people? And so on and so on. It is an issue simply of transparency that, as far as I'm concerned, and as someone who was involved from the beginning in the formation of the Trinidad and Tobago Transparency Institute, is something that I insist upon, that is necessary for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago.
And very quickly, Mr. Dumas, before I return to Afra, of course, we hope you will stay on the line with us to continue the dialogue as well. Are you asking for something that is unprecedented as far as the conduct of the President of the Republic is concerned when appointing various boards and so on? Are you asking for something that isn't normally done?
I think you can say that this is normally done, but we have to start somewhere. We can't say that because the is in the best interest of Trinidad and Tobago. I'm not concerned about this party or that party or this minister who thinks he can off so and so, etc., that you referred to, and so on. This is not relevant in terms of the best interest of Trinidad and Tobago. And in the best interest of Trinidad and Tobago, we must be transparent and we must be accountable at all levels. Now, you may say that the Constitution says that the President is not accountable in court for any action that he may have done during his term. That is true. But the Privy Council has also ruled, in a case matter that I brought, in which the Privy Council ruled in my favor, that although he may not be accountable in court or answerable in court, he must, any action that he is taking is subject to review. That is very important, which means that citizens can ask, okay, we can't take you to court, but we can ask, why did you do such and such?
And let me return to Afra Raymond here in studio with us, and just looking at some of the points raised in the open letter to the President of the Republic, and just reiterating what Mr. Dumas was saying. You're asking for the selection process being used, the identity of the firm or personnel implementing that process, the identity of the shortlisted applicants. How hopeful are you that you will get a positive response?
Well, I have to say very hopeful. I can't indicate any lack of hope at this point.
But based on what?
We are making a lobby here for an improvement in the way we do things. Okay, we've had a terrible history of a lack of trust, an increasing lack of trust in our public institutions and our public officials. We all know that. That's why you and I meet on this TV station every now and again to talk about the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
And as Reggie is saying, there has to be a call for us to do things differently and for us to do things in a better fashion. We came out of a terrible corruption scandal in the public sector, construction industry that led to the off inquiry. Coming out of that was a 39th recommendation that contract awards need to be made in as transparent a manner as possible to allay suspicions of corruption. That has been consonant with calls from the Transparency Institute and myself and others for the large-scale contracts that were recently very controversial. You don't have to list all of them.
Yeah.
For those details to be given, tender reports and cabinet notes, because that is what improves public confidence. If it's okay, as this minister or that minister or the prime minister occasionally says it's okay, it's above board, well then there's no problem publishing the details, and we continue to push at that. And the point we're making in this case is that the appointment of the Procurement Regulation Board and the Procurement Regulator are also contract awards. They're employment contracts, they're extremely important contracts of employment. They deploy public money and they supposedly are in charge of the entire procurement system. We need that to happen in as transparent a manner as possible. So it's exemplary. People understand what's taking place before the decision is taken, so that in fact we can be aware of what is happening in our country as we try to move towards improvement. We have to keep calling aspirationally for betterment, and this is what this is about.
And Mr. Dumas, as someone who would have been the head of the public service, explain, just give us some context, because as someone looking on from the outside, I'm asking myself, okay, the president say, all right, I hear them, they're breathing down my neck about this issue. Okay, so I'm going to make everything transparent. We appoint a board, fine and dandy. But the operationalizing of it, are we going to have a beautifully appointed board, fully transparent and so on, with no teeth, because a lot of these support structures are not in place? Is that something that should be cause for concern as well?
Yes, absolutely. And Afra, I think, mentioned the issue of training and so on. It's like a lot of the legislation that we have. We pass a lot of laws, they're on the books, and we say, well, there's a law for this and there's a law for that. But you suddenly find, or often find, that the law is not being implemented. And it's not being implemented because the support structure is not there for the implementation. And that is one of the drawbacks in this society. So it is a fear that I have, that yes, we can have all this. This bill has been passed, or at least a lot of it has been proclaimed, not all of it, amended in 2016, as Afra said, and so on. We are now virtually 2018. We are still complaining about corruption. We pass the thing, and then we find that we can't do anything much about it, or the board can't act too much or act effectively because of
line starting to get a little shaky again. We'll try to re-establish contact with Mr. Dumas in a moment, but Afra in studio here. I mean, the persistence of yourself and Reggie Dumas and Victor Hart and so on has to be admired. But I mean, forgive me for bringing it up again. I mean, you've been going after the CLICO thing for years now.
Yeah.
The government, different governments, not one, not just one, not just the People's Partnership or the PNM or whatever, different governments have made it their business to block you at every turn from getting access to information that is vital for the public's understanding of what went on with CLICO. So the conspiracy of silence that you have spoken about, how does any of this assist us in breaking beyond this, getting rid of this conspiracy of silence?
Well, what we want to do and what we intended to do when we designed that law, we want to create a system of transparency. And I want to take a minute to answer you and look at this. This is a report from the Office of the Contractor General of Jamaica. It's the Contractor General's report. And people who were hostile to the public procurement changes we were pushing for over the years, colleagues at JCC, colleagues at Transparency, the Chamber of Commerce and so on, they always spoke with hostility about the Office of the Contractor General. And what's interesting about it is that in one set of covers, we have all the contracts in Jamaica listed. It's also available on soft copy on a CD. It's available online on a searchable database. You can make reports online. And I need to say to people who are listening, who may have to continue this work after us, that you need to have some aspirations and some hopes and so on. The Jamaican people did this in 86. 86,
1986.
1986.
31 years ago.
Okay, they did it ahead of us. And in fact, it's got charts, it's got photographs of defects, it's got details of projects where things have gone wrong and so on. And this is the type of detail we want to get. And I need to tell viewers that what we have proposed, the thing that is in law now and we're now trying to get it implemented, that is in fact an improvement on the system. Yet, so we are discussing a system, and we are there. We are discussing a system that will give us a degree of transparency that in fact in Trinidad and Tobago we have never known before. We have to have the resolution, the fortitude to focus and to fight for what it is we want. The Office of the President and the Minister of Finance both issued press releases on the 2nd of November for zero, and both of them promised in those formal press releases that this arrangement, the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act, would come into effect at the end of December 2017. We on the 18th of December, as Reg said, we need to focus and we need to insist that this thing is done. It is done properly and it is done as transparently as possible. And that is what this call is for.
And okay, so they said something in November. They said that would happen. It don't happen. What are you going to do? Just keep making noise?
Exactly, because Fazeer, we would not have come this far. Where we are now, we would not have come this far without focused effort on the part of many colleagues. Some of them are no longer here with us, but Reg and Victor were part of it, JCC colleagues, Transparency colleagues. Without that focused effort over a great many years, which I was a participant in, as you know. But we would not have come this far without that focused effort, and we have come a great deal of distance indeed. We need to focus and finish the work. The challenge in the Caribbean, and you're somebody who writes about West Indies cricket, so I could relate to you in this level. The challenge in the Caribbean, we have no shortage of brilliant people, brilliant proposals, brilliant laws, conceptual brilliance and so on. The challenge we have as a civilization is implementation. We need to overcome that shortcoming. We need to focus and implement this important
Then
new
we're really
change.
not as brilliant as we would like to think now, because we always talk this stupidness, you know. Oh, we're so
Yes,
talented, oh, we're
yes,
so
yes.
great, but why are we in a mess then?
Right, because we need to focus and finish the work.
So we're a bunch of thief. We're bright, but we just thief.
That's a big we, eh?
No, I
understand you. I
myself
understand you.
in that.
But
I
understand you.
Let me see if we have Mr. Dumas back on the line. Mr. Dumas, hopefully you're hearing us loud and clear. But just give me your context to this, because clearly this is being pursued with the hope that this is a step in the right direction. But do you get the sense, Mr. Dumas, you are a part of a group, Reset TT as well, talking about not going back to the past, but establishing mores and manners of conduct in public life that are for the betterment of the nation moving forward and so on. Do you really believe that we are seeing a greater move towards accountability, transparency, or is it just one or two drops in a very large bucket?
I think that the population is moving more and more. When I compare the situation today, are you hearing me?
Yes,
Yes,
we're hearing
yes.
you loud and clear. Hearing
Okay.
you.
Good.
When I compare the situation today with what it was, say, 10 years ago, I find that more and more people are speaking out, more and more people are expressing concern, more and more people are meeting me in the street, people I don't know, I've never seen before, and just saying to me, you carry on. We need this kind of thing. People who might, for one reason or other, might not wish to speak or feel themselves unable to speak in public, are supporting these efforts at greater transparency and accountability. Yes, it is a long, slow process. Yes, the forces arrayed against us are tremendous. But compared with what we were, as I said, just a few years ago, I think we have made progress. There is a long way to go still. I will not be around after some years. But people who are younger, like Afra and others, will carry on, Kirk Waith, etc., to challenge the established beliefs which have led us into the foolishness that we see around us today, not saying anything, shrinking into the background like some wilting hibiscus, and not coming out and saying, look, this must stop, this is wrong. And I am going to continue to speak whatever any minister may think.
By the way, you get over the buff up from Stuart Young?
Well, it was a matter of little interest to me.
Let's return to Afra, Raymond, as we still have a few minutes left with our two guests, Reggie Dumas on the phone and Afra Raymond with us in studio. Okay, we are talking about this Board of Office of Procurement Regulation. Both of you have identified why it is so important.
Yes.
You've drawn the reference to Jamaica and how it has been successful in some way to provide some measure of transparency.
Yes.
Failing any announcement or response from the president before the end of the year, what do you do next?
Well, I think we need to bounce back to a point Reg made earlier on, Fazeer, which is the point that under law, there really isn't any legal challenge one could make against the president because this appointment is made at his discretion. And there are certain guidelines, and once the appointments are made within those guidelines, there really isn't any grounds to challenge the official known as the president. This is not about a person,
it's the office
Anthony
of the
Carmona.
president.
This is an office that we're speaking about, okay?
Yeah.
Having said that, legal challenges aren't the only avenue. Therefore, we are right now engaging in the court of public opinion. There's a public debate issue. And Carmona has proved, as an individual, he has proved responsive to public debate and to public issues coming up. We've seen that in the past with other things and so on, the expenses and the wine and so on. We've seen those things come up. So I have no doubt that he would continue to be responsive, although we're moving into the sort of the sunset of his presidency, because I think it's only a 3 or 4 months, maybe 5 months that is left before his term of office would come to an end through the fluxion of time. But we have to continue insisting on the correct thing being done.
Let me get some final thoughts from the two gentlemen. Mr. Dumas, Afra referenced cricket, and I referenced your captaincy of the West Indies in Addis Ababa as part of the diplomatic corps.
Jealous, Fuzzy.
It bited me all how, you know. I passed through Addis on the way to Zimbabwe the other day, and I see, this is the place where Reggie Dumas captained the West Indies. But
abroad too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we won the match.
That's right.
But just on that, I mean, is the public really interested in transparency and accountability for its own sake? And the reason I draw the cricket reference is yesterday somebody telling me, how come they leave out Dwayne Bravo from the West Indies side? Trinis only think about Trinis when it comes to the West Indies, the vast majority. Are we really thinking of accountability and transparency when it benefits us or for its own sake?
Well, that's why I said a few minutes ago that we have a long way to go. Yes, I agree that we tend to spend too much time focusing on our neighborhood and being only concerned when things affect us and so on. But I have been seeing a move to a greater national consciousness in this area, where people are asking more and more, are asking questions about the nation and the state of the nation. You see it in the newspapers, you see it in the letters to the editor, etc. You hear it in the comments on the radio. I agree, there's a long way to go. But I think that the move is in the right direction, and I think we cannot, all of us, cannot afford to falter.
Former West Indies captain, or at least of the diplomatic corps, Reggie Dumas. But Afra, thanks very much, Mr. Dumas. Afra Raymond, your own final thought on this as far. You mentioned the Jamaica example, but I mean, because of the cricket thing, I've been to Jamaica, and people still talk about the corruption.
Yes.
They talk about minister this and minister that.
Yes. It doesn't go away. And let me be clear with you, Fazeer. We don't expect the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act to eliminate corruption. It's never been eliminated anywhere. We expect a great reduction. We expect a reduction in the rate of profit that corrupt officials will make and corrupt contractors and suppliers will make. We expect an increase in prosecutions, and we expect a cleaner system of transactions in public money. Those are what our aspirations are in doing this piece of work. We don't expect it to ever be eliminated, but we have to be able to move in the correct direction. It's like, for example, we looked earlier on the picture of some tragic murder during the news. A young lady was murdered and so on. And of course, we know that there are violent young men and terrible crimes will take place, but that does not remove from us the imperative, if we have a civilization, of putting in place and enforcing laws to deal with murder. You know that people will murder people. Right now, somebody is probably being taxed and possibly murdered. But that doesn't stop the imperative. That needs to remain an illegal act, and we need to maintain our fortitude against it. The same thing with corruption against the public purse.
Raymond, thanks very much for taking the time.
Fazeer,
we had Reggie Dumas on the phone. Yeah, you mentioned that image that we just saw on the news. I'm not just sure we should be showing something like that, because my own view is that if it was somebody prominent, would we show it? If it was somebody of significance in the public domain, would we show it? But because the ordinary person, we show it. We need to check ourselves. 7:28 in Trinidad and Tobago. We'll be back right after this.